I've taken Joe, a super talented videographer, from doing 4 to 7k a month in inconsistent revenue, working over 50-60 hours a week, to now running a successful content agency in the dental space, doing 25-30k months in consistent revenue, all in just under 4 months. And we did all of that without burning him out, without wasting thousands on running ads, without him having to work every waking hour of the day, and without him sacrificing the quality of his creativity, his creative work. In fact, now Joe earns more and works less with a lean team, predictable systems, and clients coming to him non-stop, all in a consistent flow. Now, I know that's a big claim, so I'm gonna break it down for you, because I'm gonna show you exactly the way we set everything up when Joe entered the mentorship program, and exactly what I did to get him there step by step. But before I kind of get into the specifics, I wanna make one thing very clear. To me, scaling a creative business isn't about applying the exact same tactics to everyone. The way you would grow a content agency, for example, is far different to how you would grow a design studio, a social media agency, a web design studio. Different offers, different acquisitions, different deliveries, different systems. If you copy the wrong playbook, you're going to hit a ceiling very fast. That's why what I've developed over the past 5 years isn't a rigid checklist. It's a flexible framework, and it's been designed to fit any creative service, so you can scale without yourself becoming the bottleneck. And I've seen it work across dozens of niches, from videographers to photographers to social media managers to now even design studios, helping creatives hit their first 10k, 15k, even 20k months without burning out. And that's exactly what I'm going to break down in this video, and it's called the acquisition engine, the 5-part framework that I used to help Joe escape from a freelance trap to a now successful agency owner, doing 6 figures a month in revenue. So if you're currently watching this, you're probably a creative freelancer or agency owner who wants to step out of being the bottleneck in every project, to finally build something scalable and not just survive month to month, to stop guessing with pricing, marketing, and sales, and more importantly, to build a lean team that can actually help take you out of the business, for you to now be able to work on strategy and not just solely focus on delivery. You see, this is probably your reality right now, where you're doing everything yourself. You're probably shooting, editing, managing clients, chasing invoices. Income really isn't that consistent. It's probably 3k a month, 2k a month, 7k a month the next, but nothing's really stable here. Trying to take time off is always a mental battle. You feel really guilty because the second you stop, the money stops. You're getting tired, you're slowly burning out, and you're wondering if this is even sustainable long term. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how we took Joe from that position, from being overworked, from being overwhelmed and stuck earning 4 to 7k a month, to running a 25 to 30k a month content agency, all in just under 4 months. So if you're a content creator, social media manager, a web designer, graphic designer, whatever it may be, running a creative service of some sort, and you're feeling capped by time right now, this video will show you exactly what changes to make and how to finally scale without burning out. So let's dive right into it. So before I show you Joe's full journey, let me walk you through the exact same system that we used to get him there. Now, it's a 5-part framework that I teach called the acquisition engine. Now, it's designed to help freelancers, content creators just like Joe, install the right offers, systems, and growth levers so they can scale without becoming the bottleneck. So here's the picture. We've got offer architecture, we've got content ecosystem, delivery systemization, conversion pathways, and scalability infrastructure. Now you've got a gist of what the framework is. Let me rewind and show you where Joe was starting from and how we built each of these systems step by step. So a little bit about Joe. When Joe joined the mentorship, he was a high-performing videographer. He had clients, he had somewhat of a decent revenue. On paper, things looked successful, but under the hood, Joe's business was chaotic. He was doing about 4 to 7k a month on average. It was always constantly fluctuating, but that income came at the cost of doing 80+ hours a week. He was juggling filming, he was juggling editing, managing clients, handling communication, creating proposals, and chasing invoices all on his own. See, Joe didn't really view himself as a business owner because he felt like he was a glorified gig worker. No time, no systems, no strategy, just pure survival. You see, he wasn't burnt out yet, but he was dangerously close to. And he told me, I can't keep doing this. I'm making okay money, but it's like I've built a job I can't escape. At the same time, he was unsure how to scale. He didn't know what offer to lead with, how to attract better clients, or how to remove himself from the day-to-day editing. So literally everything depended on him. There was no clarity in positioning. There was no real repeatable system or structure in delivery. There was no real marketing engine to attract these leads to him, and no real back-end systems to try and buy his time back. It was all momentum driven, not systems driven. And the irony of it all is that he was so talented. His content was objectively strong, but he'd hit a ceiling. So when Joe joined the agency roadmap, my first focus was to stabilize his time and energy while still bringing in consistent income. That meant restructuring everything from how we worked with existing clients, streamlining his project flow, and auditing his current offer. We immediately removed unnecessary customizations, manual tasks, and built a short-term operational rhythm that made space for strategy without killing his cash flow. We then focused his energy on a few high leverage activities while starting the back-end build behind the scenes. The real goal here wasn't just to give Joe a better schedule, it was to help him install the same framework I used to scale my own agency to 30k months. Now, the acquisition engine is a 5-part system that is built around these core systems: the offer architecture, the content ecosystem, delivery systemization, conversion pathways, and scalability infrastructure. We weren't just trying to get him more clients, we were transforming Joe from a freelancer doing content to a business owner running a lean, productized content agency. And the result? Joe scaled to 25-30k months within 4 months. And he did it all while reducing his hours, increasing delivery quality, and reclaiming back his mental space. So when I began working with Joe, my objectives were crystal clear. I needed Joe to build a scalable, productized content agency model, because at this stage, what he needed most was leverage. He didn't need more editing gigs. He didn't need another client project added to an already packed week. What he needed was a repeatable system that let him scale his revenue while reducing the delivery pressure. From all of this, Joe was literally seeking freedom. He wanted freedom from being stuck inside the business for so long. He wanted clarity on the offers that he was actually selling to these clients he had at the time. How to package it, how to price it, what outcome he can deliver, and more importantly, consistency in how the leads came, where they were coming from, making sure that these clients convert, and how that work gets done. And that is exactly what my acquisition engine delivers. And as a mentor and agency operator, I believe creators, freelancers shouldn't build businesses that rely on constant manual effort. Instead, they should focus their time on 2 high ROI activities. The first is creating leverage, building offers, systems, content, and team. And the second is owning the client relationship. This is the sales, the strategy, and the long-term vision of what you're trying to build here. Everything else in terms of admin, outreach, editing, delivery, they must be systemized or delegated. That's the exact same principle I've used to scale my own agency to 30k months with a lean team. And that's the exact same model I applied to Joe's business. Here was Joe's operational reality when we started. He was a freelance videographer / editor with a few clients at the time. He was selling monthly content retainers, but with no set structure. So like every client had a custom deal. And off of the back of that, you really have to take your time out and tailor everything you're doing for that one specific client, and it just changes from one to the other. And you can imagine how draining that must be, because you're not doing one offer that you can scale really easily. He was making around 4 to 7k a month, but working 80+ hours a week. No automation, no delegation. He handled filming, editing, communication, and delivery, spending a lot of his energy on editing and last-minute requests rather than sales, planning, or scaling. His marketing was really inconsistent, so he relied heavily on referrals, tags, and reposts. There was no real content strategy of his own. His Instagram looked like a portfolio, not a brand. There was no clear offer, no funnel, no real onboarding system, or a real client journey. And of course, he felt stuck, thinking if I take a week off, everything will stop. Now at that stage, Joe wasn't necessarily running a business. He was the actual bottleneck of what I like to call a freelance hustle. You see, there was no productized offer. Joe was charging one client £800, another £1,500, and someone else £300, purely off of gut feeling. There was no structure. It was just reactive pricing based on how he felt, based on how big the client felt. There was no real defined sales system. So not only did he not have a sales process either, he was just purely relying on DMs and luck. If a client replied, he tried to wing it on a call. There was no real strategy. He didn't really understand objection handling too well. It was just hit and hope. There was no operational support. Operationally, everything lived in his head. There was no task management, no clear roles. If a client asked him for something, he'll be scrambling to deliver that, even if it meant reworking that same piece of content 4, 5, 6 times over. There was no real clear marketing funnel, so his marketing was equally scattered. One day he'd post a behind the scenes picture on his story with no real context, and the next it would be like a random repost of something completely irrelevant. There was no real funnel, there was no real nurturing, no time freedom. And for me, this really resonated with me the most, because for me, my whole purpose with creating my own agency was to achieve time freedom. And for him, every time he got close to signing someone new, he felt anxiety, not excitement, because deep down he knew he couldn't handle more work without burning out. Now, after implementing my systems, here's where Joe is right now. He's generating 25 to 30k a month in consistent revenue. He's operating a lean agency model with full-time editors, social media managers, an operational manager who is his girlfriend he recently appointed. He has a clear, defined productized offer for content strategy and paid ads. He now works roughly 40% fewer hours, primarily focusing himself on the sales, the strategy, and managing delivery. He built and installed a content ecosystem that positions himself as the go-to authority in the dental space, uses a simple sales funnel, content paired with paid ads that will lead straight to the DMs and having conversations. Client acquisition is now systemized. There's no real strong reliance on referrals only. Delivery is streamlined now with pre-built onboarding, folders, briefs, SOPs, and handoffs. His Instagram now acts as a lead magnet, not just a showcase. Every month, since the implementation, Joe's growth has been consistently increasing. He no longer feels trapped. He now runs a brand with leverage, not a freelancing treadmill. Now, here's how my acquisition engine transformed Joe's business. Now, this was a partnership. Joe executed with intensity. I provided the structure and systems to channel his energy. Now, my first operational priority was establishing a structured, scalable offer. When Joe came in, every client was different. Some were paying for 3 reels, 1 shoot with editing, others just wanted raw footage. It was all custom pricing, custom scope, and completely unscalable. We needed to shift from what do you need to here's how we work. Without a clear offer architecture, growth operations are all just straight up guesswork. So we fixed that. We implemented a 2-tier monthly retainer structure. Tier 1 is basically a starter content package for dental practices just entering social media. And we have tier 2, where it is a full content engine with more assets, strategy support, priority delivering, and paid ads. So we made it intentionally obvious that the monthly retainer provided more value per pound than the one-off shoots. For example, clients would get more deliverables in the retainer. So for example, 12 assets versus 6 if you were to go for a one-off shoot. Strategic guidance. So this is where he will now give them the information on where to post, how to film, the direction to film, what works and what doesn't work. Faster delivery turnaround, and a more collaborative experience versus just a transactional content drop-off. At the same time, we also updated the one-off shoot packages to reflect higher rates and tighter scopes. So not to exactly punish one-time buyers, but to reinforce this exact logic. If you're doing more than a shoot a quarter, you're better off on a retainer. By repositioning his offer this way, we made the retainer feel like a no-brainer option. And that led to significantly more recurring revenue for Joe without needing more clients. And the reason why it worked was because it gave clients clarity and it gave Joe control. He was no longer negotiating scope, he was selling outcomes. So once the offer was built, we had to communicate it consistently and with authority. Joe really had no personal brand. His Instagram was a highlight reel of client work. There was no message, no positioning, no direction. We needed to turn his content into a lead generation ecosystem. So we rebuilt his Instagram profile with a new bio, new highlights, call to actions, and a visual style. So you can see here, the content is a lot more on brand. He now understands the different content pillars of will actually attract his leads. Everything is a lot more structured in the sense where if someone who has come onto his page for the first time, they can see who are the clients he's worked with, and they can kind of a deep dive into that experience, that story that he's now built to showcase of how he works, his processes for each of these clients. So the content strategy that we specifically gave for Joe was built around 3 pillars. The first being authority, content that showcased he knew what drives for local dental practices. The second was human. We needed to show behind the scenes the value of doing social media marketing for dental practices in today's current market, the wins, the losses, the tough times, everything that we can showcase for him to be as human as possible. And then offer, content that clearly explained how his service works and who it is for. So off of the back of this, we created a weekly publishing cadence, so 3 reels, 2 carousels, 8 to 12 stories per week. Now, instead of random posts, Joe's content was doing the heavy lifting, attracting the right leads, warming them up, and making him look like a pro. We've got the content pillars all in place. Here was one example of a testimonial that he was showing, which was a dental testimonial. So it's like a patient doing a testimonial of the service she received from the dental client. He's recorded that piece of content. He's run that as a traffic ad. And you can see here roughly just under 120,000 views, 42K reach, and roughly 40 leads from that. And he's used this piece of content to showcase on his portfolio, on his page, making it public for more content, for more dental practice owners to see. So obviously in the dental practice, testimonials are really important. And Joe's here showcasing his systems and his frameworks of how he makes that a genuine interaction with those patients for those dental clinics, which is a very hard thing for these clinic owners to do because they don't really know exactly how to do it. Now he's positioning himself as the person who can do that. So he's bridging that gap between the problem and the solution, and him being that bridge. Now, off of the back of all of these pieces of content that he's making, prospects will look at that and they will say, hey Joe, I run my own dental practice and I love that video where you explained how practices can get more testimonials from patients, something that I'm struggling with myself. Can you help? The next step was removing Joe from the day-to-day delivery bottleneck. Now, he was editing every video himself, managing every brief, chasing revisions. There was no SOPs, no folder structures, no feedback systems. It was all chaos. So we systemized it all. We wanted to remove Joe from the operations as best as we can. So what we did was we created a templated onboarding flow, straight from Google Forms to client folders, brief templates. We built a Trello board to manage the production timeline. We brought on 2 editors trained on Joe's exact style, a social media manager and a full-time operations manager who is his girlfriend. We also then managed to create SOPs for client onboarding, shoot prep, file handoff, and editing briefs and rounds. So all of this reduced Joe's time working in the business from roughly 60 plus hours a week to now just under 30 hours a week, doing the final checks, doing the shooting, majority of it, leaving the editing to the team. But the bulk of his time and his workload has been reduced to nearly half. Now this gave Joe the confidence to sell more because now more clients didn't mean more hours. Delivery was deoccupied from his time and more revenue. So now that the offer, content and delivery was solid, we needed consistent clients. Now as part of the learning that entire foundation of the acquisition engine, there's another part that's attached to it. Now this is what I call, now I've laid it out like this. We've got personal branding, we've got outreach, we've got content, we've got paid ads, we've got sales. All of these 5 parts will lead to more booked meetings, subsequently leaving. Now at this point, Joe had already built out the foundations of those individual points I've just mentioned. He's already got a clear personal brand. He's already got a valuable content ecosystem in place that's bringing him the attention. We've paired the paid ads with the content. So now he's maximizing the output. With the outreach, we've installed an outreach mechanism. So he's now able to dial in, learning how to have these conversations with these clients, even reaching out to some clients he may potentially want to work with by learning how to do the strategic way of outreach. But one thing was missing, and it's the most important part of the acquisition engine: sales. The S that turns traffic into income. Because even if you have leads flowing in, if you don't know how to turn them or convert them into clients, you're stuck in leads purgatory. He didn't know how to turn them into clients. He had the attention, he had the engagement, even some interest in the DMs, but there was no real system, there was no real script, and there was no real confidence coming from him. He didn't need more content, he needed conversion pathways, the mechanics and psychology to turn conversations into cash. So we installed a structured DM with his organic ecosystem and paid strategy. So instead of replying off of the cuff, Joe followed a 2-phase flow. We want to qualify them first in phase 1. Whenever a lead replied to his story or reached out from an ad, Joe didn't send prices off the bat. He asked powerful qualifying questions like, where are you currently stuck with your content? Is the goal for you visibility or is it conversion? The most important thing for him here is to ask the right questions to qualify them in the DMs as best as he can. And of course, I always encourage it, show a bit of personality. Showcase what makes you you. Typically, you could drop a voice note, you could drop a GIF, a meme, whatever it may be, just make it you. And the reason for that is it instantly builds trust. We humanize that interaction and it allows him to be perceived differently from like another freelancer or another salesman, you know, just escaping from that perception. So then phase 2, once they are on board, we take them straight to a discovery call. There's no pitch, no pressure. Once that lead was qualified, he would say, I've got a couple of ideas based on what you said. Let's hop on a quick call this week and I can share those ideas with you. Now, on the call, we gave Joe a simple, repeatable 3-step discovery call framework. Now, this was for him to have the confidence to lead the call with authority, lead the call as if he knows what he's doing and that he can actually give them straight value. Because a lot of times when freelancers would hop on these calls for the first times, or they're stuck in this problem where they have these calls with these prospects, but they can never really showcase their value. They just go in off of the back of, yeah, we can provide, you know, X amount of videos, X amount of reels, X amount of stories. But in the client's mind, there's no real value from that because anybody can do that. So the 3-step discovery call framework is understanding their current situation. Where are you now? Uncover their pain, what the confusion is, what is the current chaos looking like right now. Then we go through a case of what's stopping you from taking action. So we surface the real bottlenecks. Is it investment? Is it time? You're not finding the right person? Usually it's one of these 2 or 3 things, but it's inconsistent execution. And then we go to bridging it all together, how he can help. We match the language and show them how his system solves exactly what they said. But here's the script. This wasn't just a fancy new script. Joe was now able to charge 2 to 3K a month, 2-3 times more than what he used to charge. And that kind of leap requires more than just tactics. It requires having a new identity. Now let's be honest, the biggest reason most agency owners and freelancers stay stuck, it's not because people don't pay them or won't pay them. It's because they don't believe someone should. Now Joe had that voice in his head too. What if they say no? Who am I to charge this much? What if I can't deliver? Imposter syndrome. So we didn't just build him a sales system, we attacked the belief system underneath it. And here's exactly how we rewired it. So we broke down the ripple effect of his content. So engagement, brand trust equals sales. He wasn't selling videos, he was selling outcomes. Once we understood that his outcomes led to real value, we anchored his price off of the back of his results. He looked at what his clients had achieved, growth, retention, higher visibility, and suddenly 2K felt normal. It's not ambitious anymore. So off of the back of that, there was momentum. His first close at 2K a month proved it to himself. That emotional evidence changed everything for him. And this will all reinforce that new identity. Week after week, we drill it into him. You're not a freelancer anymore. You're not building a growth system. You're not doing tasks. You're now a strategic partner to these clients, to these prospects, to these people that want to work with you. And the reason why it works is the conversion pathway is where the entire engine compounds, because in this formula here, the S is the multiplier, and without it, everything else leaks. Now Joe has consistent sales calls, he's able to close at higher prices, and he's able to lead with confidence, not anxiety. And he doesn't even sell. All he does is he helps these dental clinics get more attention through his unique mechanism. Finally, we set up the back end to support long-term growth. Joe didn't necessarily need a huge team, but he needed the infrastructure to grow without breaking. So what we built was financial tracking templates so that he can understand what the monthly recurring revenue is, what the churn is for each client, what the profit margins are, what the costs, all of the basics that an agency and a business owner needs to understand about their business. This will help him understand what's working right, where the problems are coming from, how to avoid future problems, etc. The second was dashboards for client status, leads, service delivery, content queues. And the last bit was the capacity and hiring. So a simple dashboard that literally mapped out his team's available hours with the client deliverables per week, the projected lead flow, admin and buffer time, weekly capacity thresholds. All of these things basically showed him in real time how many clients he could take on, when he needed to say no, or at what point he could be able to raise prices, and when it was time to hire, and for what role exactly. This one tool shifted Joe from being reactive to now being proactive. He didn't need to wait until he was drowning before he could get help. He could now plan 30, 60, 90 days ahead if he wanted to, confidently knowing, if I close in, let's say, another 2 more clients, I'll be able to bring in X amount of revenue by this exact day of this month. This will lead to me having X amount of cash flow after expenses and costs were all out. This will potentially give me the opportunity to reinvest in this or that for a new service that he may want to introduce out. So all of this gave him that clarity to avoid overhiring, making a mistake that most agency owners would make, or most freelancers would make trying to scale. Because when you scale without visibility, you're either going to burn out or you're going to bloat your team. But in this case, Joe avoided both. And he was able to build a profitable, lean operation that can expand on demand. This gave Joe visibility. He could now track cash flow, capacity, lead volume, and team workload at a glance. So now for him, scaling didn't feel like guesswork anymore. It was all structured. So through the implementation of these 5 systems, Joe's business transformed dramatically, not just in revenue, but in structure, mindset, and sustainability. So here is a rough breakdown of what the results look like month in, month out during that 4-month period we worked together. So in the first month, it was all about stabilization and setting up. So literally his revenue was around the 4 to 7K month. So let's just say roughly 6K on average. So here we began by auditing Joe's operations. So creating space in his week, introducing the productized offer. Content strategies and delivery systems were all drafted, but they weren't live just yet. And the key focus here was to buy Joe time without dropping income. So then we move into month 2. Now this is where majority of all of the systems were activated towards the 3rd, 4th week of month 2. But at the end of month 1, that's when all of his content was successfully launched. And off the back of that, he managed to sign his first client. And this was from using the revised pitch deck. His offers, his packaging, his content strategy all came in place. His content calendar was all launched. Team were onboarded and SOPs were all in motion. Now off of the back of that, he's reduced his working hours by 15%, all by mainly stepping away from editing. By month 3 was full system integration. So by here, he's managed to sign on 3 new retainers on his highest tiered package. His delivery was now handled by 60% of his contractors, and Joe ran 7 to 10 discovery calls in 1 month, more than the previous 3 months combined, and his revenue jumped straight to 16.5. And then in month 4, it was all about scaling with confidence. You know, Joe managed to scale straight to 25, 30K a month. His lead flow was consistent through content, paid ads, and through the DMs. Referral clients were now being directed through the formal onboarding systems. Joe was fully out of the editing, and now he's able to manage his business, his agency from a strategic level. Burnout was replaced with excitement, and he now saw the bigger vision. And here's just a few screenshots of him, just letting me know about some of his wins. And for me, these moments are, you know, they just fill me with excitement. They fill me with so much joy because I understand the work that they put and I understand how much they deserve. And here he mentioned how he closed one of his clients for 2.5K a month. For 3 months, it was for that price at 2.5K. And then after 3 months, it would resume, or it would be increased to 3.5K for 12 months if they're happy with the results. And then he mentioned here, the start of Feb to mid-March, the revenue is expected to be 30K a month. So record-breaking months. And that's a mixture of individual shoots, retainer clients, extended projects, editing fees, etc. And there's still so much more that he can do with those extra dates available. So one of the biggest changes for Joe wasn't just revenue, it was how Joe saw himself. He no longer introduced himself as just a videographer. He started saying, I run a content agency that helps dental clinics grow through performance-based social content. That mental shift mattered because it changed how he priced, it changed how he pitched, and how he carried himself in sales calls. He started saying no to low quality clients. He started hiring support. He stopped over delivering to people who didn't respect the scope. He started planning quarters, not just reacting to weeks. He finally felt like he was in control. Now, Joe told me on one of our calls, I've made more money in the last 30 days than I have ever before. But the best part is I'm doing half of the hours. He actually feels like a business owner now, not someone who just happens to have a few clients. Now, this case study proves what happens when a talented freelancer installs the right operational systems. They understand what their offer is. They understand their marketing authority. They have a streamlined delivery. They have the confidence to sell, and they have the ability to scale through having the right infrastructure in place. Now, the key here wasn't working harder or learning another editing trick. It was switching from a freelancer mindset to an operator mindset and putting systems in place to support that shift. If you're watching this right now and you're currently stuck in the exact same position that Joe was in, making 2 to 3, 4, 5K a month, handling everything yourself, unsure how to scale without losing your sanity, feeling like you've built a machine that runs on your sweat, then you're also likely one system from leveling up. Drop me a message on Instagram with the word mentor, and I'm going to walk you through exactly how we can install that same system that Joe used step by step, so you can now scale your freelancing gig, your current content agency with clarity and control. See you on the next one.